United States Senator who says government is out of control. In his new book, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul outlines the bloating of the federal government. The book is Government Bullies, How Everyday Americans Are Being Harassed, Abused, and Imprisoned by the Feds. Senator Paul joins us now. Our guest host continues. Democratic strategist Bob Shrum is with us as well. Senator, yesterday it got a lot of play on a lot of different websites. We had Mark Faber on, who looks at things. He thinks the government 50% of the government should be cut immediately, just to try to get us back on the course to financial stability. That's obviously not going to be possible. But what if we were to just freeze the government? Is that something we could look at?
Well, the interesting thing is if you freeze spending, the pundits in Washington will call that a $9 trillion cut over 10 years. So you remember how everybody was talking about, to be credible, you need to cut at least $4 trillion? That's $4 trillion from proposed increases. So a freeze is scored by CBO as a $9 trillion cut over 10 years, but it would balance the budget. I think it's simple enough for everyone to grasp, and I personally think it would be a great idea. Or I'm also in favor of a penny plan, which would cut 1%, but a real cut of 1% each year for 6 years, and it balances in the 7th or 8th year.
Senator, and Bob Shrum is here, if we were to combine freezing the government with raising taxes somewhere, I'm not sure how where Bob wants to raise them, but raising them, I guess, on the high end, that's what we usually hear. Could we do it even more quickly? And is that something that you would agree to get the freeze?
Only if you want negative economic growth. You could have a balanced budget, no economic growth, but I wouldn't be in favor of that. The only way to stimulate the economy and get the economy growing is to leave more money in the hands of those who earn it. So I'm a big fan of tax cuts, not revenue neutral tax cuts that leave more money in Kentucky, more money in Ohio. Really, that's the only way you can stimulate the economy. You need to grow the private sector, which means you need to shrink the public sector. So I don't want more money in Washington. I want a smaller budget, and I want it balanced with a smaller number. I don't want to balance a $3.8 trillion budget. I want to balance it with what the revenue is that comes in. That's about $2.2 trillion currently.
Yeah, look, Senator, Bob Shrum here. During the 1990s under Bill Clinton, we had marginally higher tax rates, created 23 million jobs. Under George W. Bush, we had a cut in the tax rates. We had big deficits. We had virtually no net job creation. Why should we believe that this model of cutting taxes and giving big tax breaks to people at the top, not all that many of whom, by the way, live in Kentucky, will create a lot more jobs in this country when the record suggests that's not the case?
I think the two biggest examples of when cutting tax rates for everyone, including the 1%, have worked to lower unemployment would be Kennedy in the 60s and then Reagan again in the early 1980s. Some of the growth we were having in the 90s, I think, was left over personally from lowering the top rate from 70 to 50 and then lowering it again from 50 to 28. So I think the tax policies that Reagan instituted carried forward and gave us a decade of growth. The other thing is that I look at it the way Milton Friedman looked at it. Nobody spends somebody else's money as wisely as they spend their own. So any money given to government is given to the inefficient sector. Now, we have to have government, but we should minimize how much money government has because they're inherently incapable of doing things wisely with the money.
Great. Senator, I got this DVR. I'm going to replay that to myself a couple of times. I get that question.
I disagree with it, but we're running out of time.
Anyway, Senator Rand Paul, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time today. And I love Kentucky. I grew up in Cincinnati, looking over. There's plenty of wealthy people in Kentucky. Thank you. Anyway,
actually, the median income in Kentucky is somewhat below the national average.
Oh, he's looking down on it now, Senator.
No, I'm not looking down on it. I want those people to rise up, and the way they do it is we invest in the middle class, not tax giveaways to the wealthy.
We want some trickle down government. All right, thank you.
No, build from the middle class up.